Hello, welcome to the channel and welcome to another LSP film podcast with me, your host Chris with a K. I hope everyone's well. So on tonight's episode, we're going to be looking at one of Britain's biggest secrets, and that is the money in your pocket, and a meeting of minds between two people who have spent decades looking behind the City of London's mask. Joining us are Justin Walker and Chris Coverdale. Justin brings a rare perspective through family ties to the Bank of England directors, and Chris is here to demand answers. How do we reclaim our economy back from the elite bankers and the investors running the show? Today we explore the Bradbury Pound, the debt-free solution that won wars but buried banks. We're discussing why 20 other MPs won't discuss it, what really happens at secret meetings, and how we trigger the 7% wake-up needed to end the debt news for good. It's time for us to move away from a system that serves just a few to a system that serves the people.
Are you concerned about all this corruption being rebranded as conspiracy theory? Well, don't you worry. Sit back and relax and join in the conversation with today's guest. Welcome to another LSB Film Productions podcast with your host, Chris Brooks.
So welcome to the channel and the show and the podcast. Great to have you here. Let's butt heads. And when I say let's butt heads, I am pretty much referring to you two butt heads whilst I listen and go, yeah, oh, that's good. So, welcome.
Well, it's the old farts evening. It's an old farts evening. Those who've been round the block a few times.
Some more than others, but yes, I will take that. So, who would like to start then? Are we having Justin or are we having Chris?
I should go deference to age. Chris, you start off.
Oh, gosh.
Chris with the C.
Well, as I say, because the focus is the Bradbury Pound, I would love to start hearing much more about what in brief, what it is, so that the people seeing these things for the first time understand it, and what you think should be done in order to introduce it into Britain and to move us forward out of the current difficult situation into a far better monetary system that is beneficial to the people and not to the few elite bankers and investors who are running the country.
Oh, okay. Well, I will try and be brief because I normally give a long story and stuff like that. So I'm going to try and be very brief. But effectively, I am not an economist. I'm not an expert in money. And if somebody had said pre-2012 that I would be rabbiting on about money and banking and stuff, I'd have laughed at them. But because my uncle was a director of the Bank of England for 17 years and he went to the very first Bilderberg, I was allowed to see behind the City of London mask. And as a young man, as a teenager and young man, I started to see things. But then gradually, I sort of woke up myself and I became a member of the Ecology Party, Green Party, and I started to see things behind the scenes. I was talking to people like David Bellamy and people. And I started to get wheeze that the climate change thing wasn't all it was. You know, and there were people controlling the narrative who were not entirely honest. But yes, I started to get the feel that there were people pulling the strings on our politicians. And of course, Liz Truss has now gone and confirmed that. And I started to say to myself, well, who is controlling money? Because there's a lady out in America called Ellen Brown, lovely lady. Mm-hmm. And she has written various books on bankers and stuff. And through her, I came across the what do you call it, Lincoln greenback, the greenback dollar, which saved the North, the American North, in the American Civil War. And basically, in a nutshell, they've gone bust. They were fighting the American Civil War. Lincoln's the North. They run out of money, and the City of London were happy to loan them money at something like 23% interest or something. Lincoln knew immediately that was putting his country into a debt noose. So one of his colonels, one of his personal advisors said, well, why don't you just create the money based on the wealth of the American northern states? Why not just simply create debt-free, interest-free notes as you do your coins? And he thought, yeah, I will do that. And they were called the greenback dollar. And with that, everyone was happy. The soldiers were paid in it. They were happy. The people manufacturing the weapons were happy. The ordinary people buying bread, milk, and groceries and stuff were happy. The railroads were happy. Everyone was happy, but except the bankers, because they were not making any money out of the debt they were trying to sell people. So, and many believe that that is the real reason why Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, because it was a put-up job by the City of London. But we can probably discuss those sort of things later, because I suppose you could describe those as conspiracy theories, because we've got no actual evidence.
I haven't got my head with it.
But the evidence is that the greenback dollar won the Civil War for the North, for the Union. And I was fascinated. I thought, wow, and I thought, well, why can't we have a greenback pound? So I wrote an article for the UK column. In those days, it was a newspaper. And as a result of that, I had this mysterious phone call from somebody claiming he was a son of another director of the Bank of England who knew my uncle. And I won't go into it's quite amusing, but I'm not going to go into it now. But effectively, he told me the word Bradbury. He didn't say Bradbury Pound, he just said Bradbury. Research the Bradbury and you would find a solution to all of Britain's economic woes. And what he referred to was a situation at the outbreak of the First World War, when David Lloyd George, before becoming Prime Minister during the First World War, he was the Chancellor of the Exchequer. And they knew, because they were on the gold standard, that if the outbreak of a world war, people were going to be very hesitant about holding notes. And £1 in 1914 was akin today of about £160 because of inflation and stuff, all courtesy of the bankers. And so people had, if they had a £5 note created by the Bank of England, with I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of, because it is debt, it's an IOU note, it's not something based on anything tangible. So people started to feel very uneasy about having these notes. And they thought, no, we're going to go to the Bank of England and to the high street banks and say, we want gold. We want a gold sovereign, half sovereign, whatever, in exchange for this piece of paper, which says I promise to pay the bearer on demand. The only problem is that the bankers, being the corrupt little buggers they are, had been creating many times more notes than they actually had gold in the vaults to back it up and to underpin those notes. So it was going to be a run on the banks. There was going to be a run at the declaration of war. There was suddenly going to be a run on the banks and the City of London. And of course, when you're trying to, you're mobilizing your nation, the last thing you want is a financial crash. So the Chancellor, in 2 days, got a Currency and Notes Act through Parliament, and we declared war on, August the 4th. And I think by August the 8th, the very first Treasury notes started to come out, and they were printed for the very first batch. They were printed on one side of an A4. One side only, and it was stamped paper. And they were very crude, but when people had explained to them, this note represents part of the wealth of the nation, and it's debt-free, interest-free, and it's done the same way as the coins in your pocket, and still are done today the same way. The coins in your pocket are done exactly the same. People accepted it, and it was brilliant. But the bankers realized, whilst their necks had been saved, and there was no collapse of the economy, they realised they weren't going to make a killing out of the killing on the Western Front and elsewhere.
Now, before we get back into our show, a quick word from our sponsors. If you've ever had that unexpected knock at the door from police, a visit from bailiffs, or received a legal threat without warning, you'll know just how quickly confusion and fear can set in. And that's where Willoughby Genius Mark II comes in. Built on more than 750,000 legal entries and across 50 plus countries, it provides immediate legal guidance when you need answers fast. No waiting for appointments, no eye-watering hourly fees. Just direct access to the relevant legal information right when you need it. It helps to verify information, explains your options, guides you through legal situations with clarity and precision. Legal technology is evolving rapidly, and those who understand it will be better equipped. Now, before we jump back into the show, click in the link below, use LSB Pro for £5 off of your first month's premium. Right, let's get back into it.
So they went running back to David Lloyd George, said, "Oh, good, look, that's great, you've saved the day. Perhaps now we can get back to the old, you create bonds and we buy up the bonds and, we'll give you money and we'll charge you interest on that." And, So, okay, David Lloyd George, who was
learned their lessons then.
Sorry?
learned their lessons then.
Oh, yeah. So but he agreed then to phase the Bradbury out, not to stop it immediately because people would ask too many questions, but just to sort of let it die down. In fact, the last Treasury note came out in around about 1926. And in fact, I've got a picture, I've got one here actually. I should have got this out beforehand. Where are we? Here we go. Let's have a look. Here we are. Here's a Bradbury Pound. This is the second edition. I bought this in York. This is the Bradbury Pound. This is a second edition that came out in about the back end of 1914, and it's signed by Sir John Bradbury. John Bradbury, who is the secretary to the Treasury, and so they were nicknamed Bradburys. Everyone talked about them. The soldiers wrote. Well, there's a poem. I've got a punch from 1914, and there's a tribute to the Bradbury. And people recognized that this was an incredible way to create money. But the bankers realized they couldn't make any money out of this. So in the end, David Lloyd George climbed down and allowed the bonds to be created for the City of London to buy up, etc., at interest, which meant that the national debt at the beginning of the First World War was £650 million. Okay, at the close of play in 1919, at the Treaty of Versailles, the national debt had gone up to £7,500 million. So the bankers had made their killing out of the killing. But initially, they were saved because we went down the common sense path of creating debt-free and interest-free money that was based on the wealth and the creativity of the nation. In other words, something solid, something stable. The money was underpinned by something tangible. Like some people like to have gold, but the truth is we can't go back to the gold standard because there isn't enough gold in the world. And if anyone got wind of the fact that countries are going back to gold standard, the price of gold would just go through the roof. Plus the fact many people, pretty unsavory people, control a lot of the gold. And of course, unfortunately, we got rid of a lot of our gold. So there we are, courtesy of Mr. Brown. So there we go. That in a nutshell is what a Bradbury is. It's sovereign money. We call it sovereign money. And we have a supporter. We've got Richard Werner, the professor. He recognises that this is the sort of direction we've got to go. And perhaps before I shut up, I will just say this. I've been lucky enough to have a network of people on the inside telling me the truth. Now, unfortunately, most of them have died off. And I had two wonderful people, David Pidcock and Ken Palmerton, who I owe a huge amount to, and they came onto my scene. They came onto my radar just shortly after that mysterious phone call. So I get the feeling, because who my uncle was, I was going to be used as a conduit to get this information out. So I'm not the creator of this information. I'm not the genius behind it. I am merely a guy passing on information from the people inside who really want the truth to break through and to bring down this evil Tower of Babel, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, I believe the truth is starting to come out. But remember this, the entire financial system at the moment is in the hands of private, unelected, unaccountable people who meet in complete secrecy. That's it. So you don't have to be an economist. Any economist, if they belong to the Austrian School of Economics, they belong to the Keynesian School of Economics, the School of New Economics, all these different schools of thought. None of them, not one of them, accepts the fact that the entire system is in the hands of private, unelected, unaccountable individuals who meet in secret. And of course, the crux, the core of this is the thing called the Bank for International Settlements. And barely 1% of the country, in our country, would have ever heard of it. And of that 1%, probably only about 10% would actually know what it does. And I can pretty well prove that because since finding out about the Bradbury Pound, I've talked to 20 plus MPs, face to face. And usually, after the first question I asked them is, what can you tell me about the Bank for International Settlements? And not one of them could tell me anything at all about it. So there we are. That's me. I'll shut up now because that really, in a nutshell, is what sovereign money is about. It's common sense, and it is the way to collapse the house of cards. Just one thing will collapse the house of cards. It's not crypto money. It's nothing like that. This is solid money. It can be electronic. It can be physical, whatever. But the point is, it's based on something tangible and stable. And of course, then you can detach yourself completely from the other system, which is based on criminality.
So that's very good introduction, Justin. Very excellent. So the real issue is how are we going to introduce it? It seems to me from what you've been saying that the actions in order to introduce it were taken by the government of the day, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Now, we know at the moment we have a real problem that we cannot control anything that goes on in Parliament, in the government. They have almost total control of the current monetary system. So what I'm really wondering about is how do we go about introducing sovereign money in Britain so that it starts to have real traction, if you like, in the community, at the same time as our current monetary system is being manipulated by the elite. So you've got any ideas on that?
But the whole thing is, I mean, how many of us now can talk about the Bradbury the way I've just talked about it?
No, very few.
Not many.
A few thousand people can. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people since 2012. A lot of people write to me saying they like the idea, etc. But the truth is, we're still in the minority. Now, I talked to one mathematician, I don't know how many years ago it was now, but he said something like, you've got to wake up 7% of the people, and that will trigger the majority eventually you'll need. And of course, time is against us to some extent. So really, what's got to happen? It's a bit like you've got this revolution of information, courtesy of AI and this, that, and the other. We've got to have a revolution of a truth about money. Because money is simply, I mean, if those who can control the money can control the world and the world stage and what happens on that stage. Yeah. If they cannot control the money, they collapse. They're a house of cards. They know it. This is the big secret. And I'll give you proof that I know that the Parliament and the politicians who are all in bed with the City of London, we can come on to that in a moment. But the thing that comes across more than anything else is that the politicians themselves who think they're sovereign in Parliament and they're in control, they've got a guy there who's called the City Remembrancer, a position that was set up in 1571 by Queen Elizabeth I. And that individual, it looks like something which is rather sort of Dickensian, sort of style, a tradition of having somebody from the City of London sitting with your MPs. But he's there to make sure that the MPs never ask any difficult questions about money creation and money supply. And I will give credit to one individual. Only one individual has mentioned the Bradbury Pound in Parliament in the last 70 to 80 years, and that was Andrew Bridgen. And, Andrew, bless him, I briefed him about this. He didn't know anything about it because he was an MP. He's one of my 20 MPs who said he didn't know anything about it. He took from me all the information and stuff. And when he was asking, when he was standing in doing the King's speech, when they opened Parliament about two years ago, was it? And he was basically saying what they should be doing. And one of the things he said was the government should be embracing the Bradbury Pound and sovereign money. So, that was brilliant. It actually went into what's the book they record all the stuff, and my mind's just gone blank.
The census.
Pardon?
The census?
Hansard, I think.
Hansard. I couldn't think what it was. Hansard. So at least it's in Hansard. But the real truth is we have to wake people up. We need to get about 7% of the population demanding sovereign money. I have written to the last Chancellor of the Exchequer, bless her, Rachel in accounts, as they were joking. I mean, it was a brilliant nickname, that. And I wrote to her with 6 questions. I won't go through the questions now, but there were 6 questions, one of which was Professor Richard Werner has said that the City of London is a sovereign country in its own right, like the Vatican, like Washington, D.C. She said, how can that be right when the Bank of England is based, So I was simply asking the question, excuse me, if that's a sovereign country in its own right, what's it doing interfering with our country? So I said, can you confirm or deny that the Professor, Richard Werner, one of the top economists in the world, is correct, or is he wrong? Another thing I asked was, when the governor of the Bank of England, who, by the way, is a Fabian, when he comes back from his meetings every 6 weeks or so at the at Basel, in Basel, at the Bank for International Settlements, which is a policy committee they have, and it consists of around about 10 governors of 10 central banks, plus other invited guests who you don't know who's invited. And they have this meeting. No minutes are taken. I mean, this is staggering. No minutes are taken, so it's in total secrecy. So I asked a simple question. When he returns from these meetings, does he come to number 11 or the Treasury? And does he brief you, the Chancellor, on what was said? Because this is strategic importance about money creation in the world and money supply. Does he come and tell you what was said? And of course, they can't answer. So on 5 occasions in the last 16 months, 5 occasions, I've sent letters courtesy of my MP. So my MP, Tim Farron, doing his job as a good constituency MP, has sent these letters on my behalf to the Chancellor, and we got derisory responses back. I mean, not even going anywhere near answering the questions, just saying, well, thank you for keeping us informed and thank you for letting us know what your feelings are, etc. Not answering a damn thing. And the last one I got was saying, please don't write to us again. We'll take your letter, but we're not going to respond anytime soon on any of these questions. So there you are. I mean, I've got them. If you go onto our website, thegreatrising.com, which is great-rising.com, and go into the financial section, you will scroll down and you'll see all these letters in their full glory and the pathetic responses. They can't answer the question, because if they did, they'd collapse the house of cards. And that's it.
Mm. Any links will be in the video description as well, just so you know.
Yeah, and of course, the main thing is, as you know, Chris, is what you said, Chris with a C, because it's a bit difficult. K, Chris, and C, Chris.
It looks like Chris with a C has frozen.
Do? Well, basically, it's talking to one another and getting people aware of this fact that the government could create all the money it needs, debt-free interest. I mean, just look what's happening. They're discussing at the moment the fact they haven't got the money for social care. We lost Chris.
Yep.
Is he gone?
He's frozen. We'll get him back.
Yeah, so you've got all the social care, you've got defence, we've got no navy to speak of now. Everything's being hollowed out. Everywhere you look, there's a shortage of money. So we're talking about personal taxation, increasing personal taxation, and all that. That's a load of cobswallop. Our country, according to the Office of National Statistics, is worth in the region of 33 trillion pounds. So to put it bluntly, we could take 2 trillion. It would be up to much better people than me to decide how you use sovereign money to gain the maximum effect. I'm not an economist, I've told you. My job is merely to wake people up to the fact this happened in 1914. It could happen. You could use it again. Why are we not using it? Because it proves beyond all reasonable doubt that there is a level of governance above our so-called elected representatives who basically are just puppets. They're answerable to these puppeteers who we don't know about. And the way these puppeteers exist is because they control the money. That's it.
So how do you go about getting people aware of this? Now, I'm just thinking along the lines like you've got Andrew Bridgen, who's friends with, I don't know, friends, but his acquaintances with, hello, and he's back again. I'm just saying we've got Andrew Bridgen, who's friends with Rupert Lowe, who's got contacts. He's just been and seen Joe Rogan. He's obviously going to be familiar and friendly with people like Elon Musk. So there are platforms in which to get this out if you know the right people, or are they all bought?
I'm sorry, when I look at Rupert, and I've talked to Rupert on the phone a couple of times, and he's a nice enough chap, and I don't think he's a bad individual. I don't think he's bad per se, but I do see him as being horribly. Oh, I've just realised my battery's low. Excuse me.
Oh, this is fun.
You're all wonderfully amateurish. This my battery warning came on. Can you hear me? Over?
Yeah, I can hear you.
There we are.
Yeah.
Can you? Are we back in action
you're
again?
Still there. You're still there.
That's good. Fine. Well, Rupert Lowe is good. Well, Rupert. I've not met him physically, but I've talked to him twice on the phone. But he is horribly underinformed.
Yeah.
And he's a classic example of one of his MPs. He's run businesses. He looked after Southampton Football Club. He's a farmer. He knows a huge amount, so I'm not going to decry him. But when it comes to who our enemy is, how they operate, and at what level they do, and how they bring people into the fold, and of course, with
Surely
Elon
Bridget
Musk,
must have
we
told him
all know.
this.
Sorry.
Surely Andrew Bridget must
Well,
have told him this.
I hope he has. I haven't talked to Andrew for a week or two, for 2, 3, 4 weeks, but I have asked Andrew to set up a Zoom call with with
Rupert.
Rupert so that we can give him a full briefing. Because, as I said, the difference between us and the ordinary people who are crowding around him, most have woken up at COVID. I woke up in 1986 is when I woke up. That's when I first got
9/11.
wind that things were not right. Pardon?
9/11 was my wake up
Well,
moment.
9/11, that's still a long time ago. The point
Mm.
is, you've done a lot of research since. So people who've woken up since COVID need to just understand that there's some of us who have actually got a great deal more knowledge and research, and we need to be listened to. That's not to be said that, they do it so blinded, but they should just talk to us and understand
Mm.
the much
They
bigger
should be
picture.
open-minded
Yeah,
to,
open-minded. And
yeah.
the key to it all is we are in a war between good and evil. And you don't win a war without a strategy. And that is what we've done at the moment. In the Great Rising, we've got a thing called the Humanity First, which is a 4 year strategy, takes us up to 2030, which is a good date because that's the date, that's when they want to bring in their technocracy. That's when they want to bring in their UN Agenda 2030 and all their 17 sustainable goals and all. So they've got 2030 as a target. Well, we've got 2030 now as a way of stopping what they're trying to do. So they're net zero. We're saying you concentrate on talking to local people, win over local politicians,
Mm.
make them realize that they're all being used and that the whole thing is a well, look at communist China, look at the technocracy, look at how people there are controlled 24/7 in their workplace, on the streets, and in their homes. Yes, the new cities like Shogun and Beijing and all the rest of them, all these wonderful cities now with their skyscrapers and their they've got the remote control car. I mean, you name it, their technology is way ahead, perhaps, of what ours is. And it all looks fantastic. And to the youngsters, it all goes, wow, look at this. Our
Mm.
phone can do this and we can do that. And we can, yeah. The truth is, it is about government control. The Communist Party have you completely by the balls. And they can decide if you're not being a good citizen, we can withdraw we can withdraw certain privileges and stuff, and you may not be allowed to travel. They have a central bank digital currency, which again is programmable money. In other words, they could create money and then say, but you've got to use that money by such and such a date, otherwise it's wiped out on your phone.
Mm.
Or they can simply, you get a parking ticket.
See that what you just said there about the use it and then it goes.
Yeah.
That's what I think they should do with all these rich families who pass down all their wealth. It should be right, fuckers. You've got
Well,
130 years. After 130 years,
yeah, I must admit, there's a part of me. I'm not a socialist because I hate all these words. You see, the left-right political spectrum was only put there to keep people at each other's throats.
oh, absolutely, yeah.
It's there to keep us all distracted at each other's throats. What we've got to try and do is get people to walk away from that artificial spectrum. We are human beings and we're up against an anti human agenda. And of course, when you look at transhumanism and all the things the World Economic Forum want to bring in, all the stuff, which is all part of this this horrible technocracy,
Mm.
Orwellian technocracy, which Elon Musk's grandfather was one of the leading lights of in America. So when you see this and you see Rupert going over there, meeting Musk and all this, I don't think he has. I don't think he has one inkling of what the hell he's dealing with. And yet, this is a guy who thinks he's going to become a prime minister because everyone's going to wake up to him when they get rid of Farage. Sorry, it's lack of knowledge. We've got to educate these people, and if they don't want to be educated, then get shut of them because they're not credible to what we need today.
Mm.
There we are. I think
Yeah.
I've.
I
Sorry.
kind of, yeah, I agree with you. Unless I've always said, if you want to be a politician, I think if I had the powers that be, any politician that wanted to be would have to do at least a hero's dose of mushrooms, so they can,
Billy Connolly summed it up, didn't he? So
so they
anyone
can,
want Yeah,
Go on.
Billy Connolly summed it up. Brilliant comedian. He said, anyone wanting to be a politician should be banned for life. Simple.
Yeah, all that. Yeah, all that. How
Quite
about
right.
you, Chris? What have you got to say?
Uh, it's a good vision, if you like, for the future. But I'm really keen. We know a lot of the problems,
Mm.
and we know quite a lot of the underlying causes of the problems. But what we're not very educated about is the potential solutions. So my role really is to focus on how do we change, how do we bring about the change such that sovereign money becomes a major part of the way we operate in this country and the most powerful part of the financial system, if you like. And it's the
Mm,
movement from where we are now, where 99% of our activities are governed and controlled by a very small group of people.
that's
Quite a
true.
lot of whom are based in Tel Aviv and the City of London. And
I
we have to
think.
find some routes forward.
Mm.
So it's in that area that although I've heard a lot of people saying, well, all we need is 5–10% of the population and we will be able to force it through. Now, I've been I used that principle for a long time while I was in the anti-war movement, which I joined back in 1978, really, in full, but it was a long time ago. And what we found was even when a good quarter to half of the population of Britain were anti-war in the Iraq War times, it had and marched. We had 1 million people marching and demonstrating and so on. It had absolutely zero effect on government policy.
Mm,
And even, I mean, it's quite unbelievable how our current parliament are manipulated by the Israeli government, the Zionists in the financial system and else in political system and the legal system as well. So they've controlled just about every aspect of our society. So we have to find another way of starting to bring about change. And that's what I'm particularly interested in, are the systems that we can put in place that cause us to change our monetary system in a very short space of time.
Okay, well, I
Now, I'll
think I
give you
can
an
probably help you
example
there.
of a couple of
Mm.
changes that took place in societies in a matter of a day, and we moved from one situation to another in a matter of 24 hours. The first one is when in 1987, Sweden decided to change the side of the road they were driving on. They used to drive on
Left, yeah.
the left, as we do. And on September the 3rd, 1967, they changed to driving
Mm.
on the right. Now, most people would say that's an impossible change to bring about, but they did it and they did it very successfully. So that was a major social change, changing the behavior of every Swedish driver in 24 hours.
Yeah, 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 it's a
mm,
very good point. And I likened it to when Isambard Kingdom Brunel's broad gauge on the Great Western suddenly went to well, they call it narrow gauge. It's not strictly speaking, standard gauge. And they converted it and it took 2.5 days, a weekend. So
Yes,
basically that was pretty impressive. That
very
showed.
impressive, actually, Justin. Could I come up with another one in this country related to money?
Mm,
In 1971, we changed the old system of money in this country to decimalization.
mm,
And a lot of people say, well, we'll never do that. We can't, it's very difficult to do it. But because it was steered by a competent small group of people, about 6 or 7 in total, over a period of, I think, 11 years in preparation for it, it happened and without a murmur almost.
mm.
And, we were all brought up on pounds, shillings, and pence, and sovereigns, and half crowns, penny bits,
Lovely
and
good
so
old
on.
days.
And
Threepenny
we
bits. Yeah.
changed the decimalization. Now, the important bit underpinning this, and that happened on in a day in January
Mhm.
71, I
Mm.
think. Now, it's the principle underpinning that if we're going to move from a usurious pound as the current thing to a sovereign currency, we need to look at the systems we've got to put in place that cause that to happen. Because I don't think we'll ever get it by just a popular movement. It has to be planned carefully.
Well, I mean, I just look at it as, I mean, you gave the changing of the lanes as an example. But when it comes to like the monetary system, like people who've got mortgages, their money is tied up in their money. And so there's so much of what we've got tied up in their money. It's not, it's about how do you convert that over?
Absolutely.
I think I can probably help you here. It's one of the things. I mean, there's a group of us who have been discussing how do we envisage this change, as you like what we say about Sweden and stuff. How do we envisage this change? Well, obviously, I was talking about knowledge, increasing knowledge, because obviously people have got to have the information, they've got to have the knowledge. But one of the things becomes very clear indeed, and this is new research that I would like to say I've been involved in, but I have to say that William Keat and his people have been doing a brilliant job. And this is looking at 1688, the so-called Glorious Revolution, which wasn't glorious. It was in that year that effectively the crown was captured, the judiciary was captured, and so was Parliament by the City of London, by the financiers, by the people. After all, 1694 was the Bank of England was brought in, and of course with that the national debt. And of course, the whole idea of having an empire, which I always call the City of London Empire, not the British Empire, because this is when the whole thing blew up. And of course, the City of London became the financial centre of the world, and which still is. And I've got to just say at this moment, there have been quite a few people saying there are cracks in the City of London and stuff. I was told by insiders that this is one of their strategies. This is how you get about BRICS, this sudden emerging of BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and some others. This is a load of baloney. It's all deliberate distraction to make people think that something is happening and that the power of the City of London is dropping.
Bit like reform.
It is deliberate chaff to try and distract you and to make you think that things are happening so you don't have to get off your own backside to do anything, because it's all been taken care of. We've got people talking about white knights and people who are coming to the rescue. All a load of baloney. And I've been told that from the insiders. So I know it's a load of baloney. And the cryptocurrencies, they can be taken away and destroyed by the powers that be. They've got technology 20 years ahead of what's in the marketplace.
Well, Bitcoin now is government, because they swapped it over, didn't they? So the original Bitcoin, according to Toshi, is BTC, for where the one that the government is just Bitcoin. And so they've taken that.
I'm not an expert on that, and I don't claim to be. All I've been told by people I trust is that all these things are distractions to make people think the power base of the big fiscal families, the big, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and the Warburgs and everything, that they're on the wane. No, they're not on the wane. It's business as usual. But the good news is they are well behind schedule. So we are winning. So that is good news. But the bad news is there are some people who think that the City of London is starting to collapse and that things are all going to come good. No, they will only collapse when we go for sovereign money. Now, this is the key. Do not put the power of sovereign money into the hands of politicians. This is something that we've really got to think about very carefully indeed. Parliament has been captured by the Crown. Sorry, by the City of London. Parliament, the people, you look at the political party system, it's all about top-down control. You look at the people who aspire to be politicians. We already joked about Billy Connolly, what he said. They are not the best people in life to be making decisions. Do any of them in Parliament make decisions using human values? Do they think about compassion, love, all the things?
They do pre-election.
Well, that shows.
And then it all goes to toffee.
Yeah, that's the deception, and all the rest of it. So would you put the power of creating and controlling money into their hands? And the answer is a big firm no. So we have to get back to the old Saxon days of witons and moots and trying to involve people, and to most importantly, to stop people having careers in politics. It should be like jury service. People should be called up to serve their country for a set period and then go away and do something else. There should be no personalities in politics.
There
There
should be
should be
no
no,
career.
yeah, no
There
career.
should
There
be
should
no
be,
career.
yeah, there should be no career. But even personalities can have their flaws. Look at Nigel Farage as a perfect example. He's become a magnet for a lot of good people, but we know that he loves money, and he is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. So we've got to somehow mobilize human values, and we've got to mobilize wisdom. We've got to mobilize people who have integrity, who we know are honorable, who we know are doing things for, basically, they're doing things for the good of everyone. Selfless, in other words.
Since doing this channel, because
Mm,
this isn't how I started off. This wasn't my vocation when I started my YouTube channel. But one thing that I have noticed since doing what we do, and that is people are just so, I don't want to say paranoid, but people are just so untrusting now.
mm, yeah. And they
So
have every
even if you
reason.
are a knight in shining armor, people are going to be, controlled opposition.
Yeah.
Anyone who gets a certain amount of following or they get bigger than they were,
Mhm.
they automatically become by default controlled op. You don't get where you are by not being controlled op. So I think that's another issue that we need to try and
But
tackle as
my
well.
ambition in life is to be able to walk down the street and never be recognized, because I genuinely would hate it. I walk with people who are well known, and they get stopped every 50 yards to sign an autograph, do a selfie, and all that. I thought, I can't be doing that.
No, or never wear a red hat.
We just want good, honourable people meeting, saying, look, these are the problems. Everything's put there in a sensible way. The people for something, the people against it. You put it, and it's just like a jury. You say, well, I think the best common sense decision, critical thinking, all the rest of it, this is what we'll come to. And that's how money creation and money supply should be in the hands of fully accountable people, fully transparent people, and we'll have to devise some way of being elected. And I've always said that what we need in the future is we need a democracy. We need a benign combination of a democracy, a meritocracy, getting the best people to make decisions who are really switched on and wise and stuff, but also a veritocracy, introduce a new one, and that is the pursuit of truth at all times. So
Yeah.
you want a sort of amalgam of all three. And it can be done because good people are all around us. I meet good people on a daily basis who I would trust.
Can I
Chris, what was you going to
suggest one or
say?
two ways of doing it, Justin?
Sorry?
Can I suggest one or two ways of
Please,
achieving
go
it?
ahead.
Chris, you mentioned trust and the lack of trust, and which is precisely why I have set up a system of conditional trust documents that can be applied by anybody. Now, a trust, the reason it's called a trust is it forces trust between parties who do not know each other. And there are things like constructive trusts and others that we can utilize to ensure that we get trust in people. Now, underpinning all monetary systems is trust. And that's really why I've been really focused on trust documentation to enable everybody to decentralize power from the center right down to local communities. So certainly what I have in mind in terms of a system in order to bring about a sovereign money is to end up with 650 or so independent states, if you like, within Britain. So every parliamentary constituency, roughly, of about a million people, 100,000 people, 10 of those together would be a million people, and we'd have 65 regional monetary systems and political meeting places, so that we could really start to move all the power away from the center. And that includes the City of London. So if we set up multi-stakeholder, limited liability, community platform cooperatives owned and controlled by the people, with their own monetary system in, say, Gloucester or Cheltenham or Hastings, Brighton, wherever, Newcastle. What we can do is to set up our own Newcastle pound or Cheltenham pound or Gloucester pound on the basis that it's sovereign money. It won't be multiplied by quantitative easing, which is a fraud anyway. And we can base it on the work done by the 100,000 people in that particular constituency or local community. And you can have a limited amount of issuance of the money according to the amount of work hours adults give in a year in your local constituency. And you don't want to go too much over that, because it's what people put into their community that underpins the monetary system and the trust between people. And so that's certainly one of the suggestions I would have. We need local structures. We need decentralization.
Totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. I like it.
We need to outlaw usury completely. We need to outlaw quantitative easing and all that sort of thing with a different system. And we need to do something about the inequality in property. The major problem at the moment is that one or two small families own half the world, really, through BlackRock and others. And we've got to change that, and we can do it very rapidly.
Oh, we can, and I like your idea very much. In fact, you're putting more substance, because as I said before, I'm not an economist. I have been handed the Bradbury as like a baton. I'm holding the Bradbury baton, but I want to give it away as quickly as possible, because I know that I'm not up to the mark. I'm not clever enough or wise enough. And what you've just said to me makes an awful lot of sense. One of the people I've got his book here, a gentleman by the name of Leopold Kohr. And the book was The Breakdown of Nations by Leopold Kohr. He wrote it in 1958 or something. I met him on 3 occasions when I was in the Green Party or Ecology Party. A delightful, he's an Austrian Jew with a wonderful, wicked, dry sense of humor. He's not with us now, but a great guy. And it's a very simple book, very simple concept. Big countries create huge problems. Little countries create very little problems. And really, you look at the Swiss model with cantons and all the rest of it. Yeah. This is how we should be looking at small is beautiful. In fact, he inspired E.F. Schumacher to write his book, Small is Beautiful. And that's been one of my Bibles. That's one of those. He's got a lovely sense of humor. He was a lovely man to know. Sadly, not with us now, but I'd like to see a statue erected to him somewhere, because he really, very wise. And so what you're saying, Chris, is perfect for that. And one of the things that Richard Werner talks about is setting up of a myriad of community banks.
Yes, exactly. So each of the constituencies, I think we need 4 or 5 competitive community banks operating one local monetary system, so that no bank should have more than 10,000 customers. So you're looking at 100,000 people, 10 banks.
Well, we've got the Bank of North Dakota. Ellen Brown always likes to highlight.
Yeah, that's very good, that one.
How do we go about doing this in a safe way? And when I say that, is because you look at all the countries in the world which have tried to go against the dollar, they've ended up in quite a bad situation. So these parasites, these evil people that are holding all the strings and keeping us all down here suppressed, they're not going to give up that easy. So they're going to supply, they'll bring out the army, they'll bring out the police, they'll bring out whatever they have to. How do we combat that?
The important bit is to make sure we use the system that we have available to us to benefit us and to disadvantage them.
Yeah,
entirely lawfully. And it is making sure that it's all based on structures that are entirely lawful. And as I say, a trust is the trusts that I've done on the taxation trust are written entirely within the context of the Recognition of Trusts Act, that they all use to hide their money overseas and not pay tax. Now we need to use exactly the same trust systems to help every local community build up a new way of operating in their local community. And as I say, the structure to do that is to use the same structural legal system that big organizations, multinationals and others use in order to give themselves financial advantages. So, for instance, Shell has 300 or so subsidiary companies. And as I said before, when you have a transaction in a multi-stakeholder situation like Shell or like multi-stakeholder co-ops, which we're now able to put in place, when you do that, transactions between members are entirely VAT-free, so that businesses and individuals can be members in a local community of the local multi-stakeholder community platform co-op. And we can devise our own monetary system, have our own banks, demerge the big ones by law, and make sure that each area has its own banks and it operates in very much the same way democratically as happens in Switzerland, which a population of 6.5 million people in Switzerland have nearly 450 parliaments.
It's just sad that Switzerland, which I love to quote many times, the cantons and everything else, it's just that they're so sad. Well, we need a new Wat Tyler, and they need a new WT. They need a new William Tell, because they are hosting all these nasty, horrible organizations like the Bank for International Settlements and the World Economic Forum, etc., and to some extent some of the UN bodies. So they are hosting the people who are effectively doing the damage on the planet, who are doing the damage to the peoples of the world.
So, absolutely, Justin. And the reason they're doing it is that they have a very open, democratic, fair system that all the bankers and others recognize and say, we're going to base ourselves in Switzerland. It's by far the best place for us to operate from. Now, I completely agree with you. It's a difficulty, but it's based on a very, very good system, democratic system, where they have, say, only 12 laws in the last 4 years, rather than the 25,000 or so that get passed every year in this country. Not quite that, but it's horrendous.
It's not far off.
Well, since
they
Tony
do
Blair,
it through a democratic methodology and process that brings about eventually agreement between the people. So no law can come into effect in Switzerland or in any of the cantons without the agreement of at least 51% of the electorate. And that sort of thing needs to happen. And as a result of it happening, they turn down a lot of laws. And it's the people who turn them down and the people who agree to them. And that sort of system is what we need in 650 local communities in Britain. Now, one of the areas we could start in that has great advantages is Scotland. Now, Scotland has a different legal system. It has the Bank of Scotland. It has different taxation methodologies and so on. And if we were going to become independent, one of the first things that I would want to do is to encourage the Scots to become independent and to adopt totally different monetary systems along the lines that Justin has explained for Scotland and for all the communities in Scotland. And I think that would be a great place to start. As well as having, say, a local community. Thetford would be another good place. That's, I think, where you came from originally, Chris. Is that right?
I'm still there, mate.
Oh, you are, right. Good.
I'm still there.
Yeah, but I mean, we could look for the Thetford Pound and the Thetford Community Co-op and so on. And community co-ops write their own rules. They make their own laws. And internally, that is a very important area.
Yeah, Thetford has its own whistling club.
Our laws can take over from the imposed laws that are pushed down to us by the centre, and especially if all taxation is channeled into the local community and not to the central government, we provide the money that will get us moving into a new position.
And of course, the other thing we've got to remember, and we are the first generation, and I wrote on an email, that was exactly what I was just writing about half an hour before we started tonight. And we are the first generation to have what is effectively a central library in our living room.
Yeah.
No other generation has had access to so much information. Some of it's duff, we know that. Some of the history is always written by the victor. That's why I'm having to rethink my entire knowledge about 1688 and the Glorious Revolution. I've realized that I was being programmed the wrong way. And so we've all got to understand. We've all got to have the humility to understand that we've all got new stuff to learn, all of us. I've got plenty of stuff to learn. Everyone has. But if we've got that spirit of humility, and what I've just heard from Chris the first time tonight, that makes perfect sense to me. And this is one way. And in fact, I want to get Richard Werner engaged and get people like Chris on board and say, look, let's hammer out what do you think is a good idea to encourage people to think about going down this particular route. Because we're not hierarchical, we're linear. And we're just trying to sow the seeds of ideas that people go, I like that. And hopefully when people have disagreements, it'll be done with a few glasses of wine or whatever, in a friendly atmosphere of saying, well, look, we all want the same thing. We want I mean, I've got a strapline which I've been working on. Our entire vision of the future should be happy and prosperous families within strong and vibrant communities.
Yes.
That, in a nutshell, sums up the whole thing. And of course, you could add in an ecologically stable world or something like that, because obviously we don't want to live the way we are trying at the moment, where we're destroying ecosystems and everything else. And
can I add the word self-governing into that?
I mean, this is it. So as I say, we're working on
the
this
true
strategy.
definition of anarchy.
Yes.
Yeah, it probably is. So as I said, I can only do so much because I'm limited in my knowledge base. But I've been lucky enough to have an uncle who luckily introduced me to things which opened doors. I've done my bit to some extent. And this is where everyone has something to contribute. And this is the important thing. As I said, my ambition is to walk down the high street without being recognised. That is seriously. I've got a model railway to build. I always tell people it's not a joke. I've got a model railway. I'm 70. I don't know how long before the Grim Reaper takes me to the next frequency or whatever it is we all enjoy. But I've got a model railway to finish. And I would like to get it finished before Mr. Reaper knocks on the door. And that's how I'm humble in what I want to do, but we've all got a part to play.
Yes.
So this is the important thing. So what you've mentioned tonight, Chris, I think sounds as though it's got great mileage.
I'd love to start working with people with a bit of influence to make sure we start to do this. And I am at the moment trying to get local multi-stakeholder limited liability community platform cooperatives set up. By the way, the co-ops need to be limited by guarantee and not by shares, so that you cannot take them over if you have lots of money. There are important little tweaks, if you like, to the system that we need to use to our benefit and community benefit rather than centralized government. And so, yes, I'm all for trying to do as much as I can to help that before I pass on. Although I've seemed to manage to pass on year by year.
Long way to continue.
So
anyway, that sounds
maybe
good.
we can introduce it before my 81st birthday in February.
Oh my God, you really are an old fart. I've only just entered into the realm of being an old fart. But
you look very good for your age, Chris.
Well,
I was going to say you look remarkably good.
It's working on these issues with commitment. It keeps me young, quite honestly.
That's good. Well, listen, thank you very much, because I think we've given people quite a lot to go on. I just hope that we can find a really good way of getting people on board and in a way that we can educate them. Well, I say we, that you can educate them and get them behind this, because like you say, like Justin said, this has got legs. This is good. We just need to make people aware of it, and I think that is the main.
One of the big ways we're going to bring down the house of cards is non-compliance with a rotten system. And so withdrawal of taxation, especially when the government doesn't need to have direct taxation, it can use indirect taxation to sort of level how much money is in the system. But that's okay. But direct taxation is a way that politicians control us. And we don't want to be controlled. No. Government and governance should be kept to an absolute minimum. And I think everyone agrees with that. We all want to be left to lead our lives in peace. But equally, we do so under the natural law, common law, because that means we do no harm, cause no loss, do not conduct our affairs with mischief, or commit a breach of the peace. So we all have our part to play, but we do not want people above us, in inverted commas, basically dictating our lives completely. We don't want that. We just want a minimal common sense governance that is needed to let everyone lead their lives in peaceful, happy, prosperous ways.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think we need to set up a number of videos. Maybe, Chris, we can do this together, which looks at each of the issues that we've talked about tonight. We've covered a whole range of things in more depth to show people how it can be done locally without much problem and lawfully, without violence, and with plenty of funding from our own resources that has been diverted from central government. So I'd like to see, maybe 3 or 4, 5, 6, half a dozen short, sharp interviews and programs that put the solutions to our current problems in place and help people guide them into ways that are effective for every community.
And of course, what do we see from the conventional politicians of all hues, Green, Labour? They're all the same because they use the same 2 words. We want to give you hope and we want to give you change. Hope and change, hope and change. We're the only ones saying we want to give you the truth and solutions. Truth and solutions.
Absolutely. Perfect. Well, I'm always happy to come back and revisit this and talk about more solutions and go in depth on more singular issues. But yeah, thank you very much, both of you, for giving me your time this evening. I've really enjoyed listening to both.
I really enjoyed it, and I can see definitely, I can see now a real way of getting more the nitty gritty. Because I'll move out of the way slightly, because this is out of my area of expertise, and bring the people like Chris. You've obviously done a lot of thinking. This is where you bring other people in, and this is what it's all about. Everyone knowing what they're good at, what they're capable of, and then moving out of the way to let the others get on and do it as well. And that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed it. I hope everyone watching has enjoyed it. Check out the links in the video description of all the things that we've discussed today. And until next time, look after yourselves.
Thank you, Chris with a K and Chris with a C.
My pleasure. And thank you. All the best.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.